No one in the village of Kijijana celebrated New Year's Eve. They pretended they did. Lights were lit in homes that did not need light. Food was cooked that no one felt hungry enough to eat. Drums were taken down from walls and placed outside huts, carefully, respectfully, but never played. It was the kind of pretending that came from fear, not joy. Because everyone in Kijijana knew the truth. When the old year died, the dead prepared. 1. A village that learned to whisper. Kijijana was older than the road that pretended to lead to it. Maps marked the area as empty land. Travelers passed nearby and felt uneasy without knowing why. Birds avoided flying too low over it. The village sat between red hills and stubborn earth, its houses shaped by generations of hands that understood soil better than hope. Time moved strangely there. Not slower, not faster, just heavier. Stories in Kijijana were not told for entertainment. They were passed down like instructions. Children learned early what not to ask. Why were burials done before sunrise? Why did elders stop talking when the word midnight was spoken too loudly? Why, every year, did one house stand empty by morning? Questions like these were dangerous. So children learned silence. And silence learned them back. To the graveyard without a fence. Beyond the last line of clay houses, past acacia trees bent like listening elders, lay the graveyard. There was no fence, no gate, no sign. Just stones rising from the ground like broken teeth. Some graves were marked with names. Most were not. Some were old, sinking gently into the earth as if the soil were reclaiming them with care. Others were newer, darker, angrier. The dirt still unsettled, as if it had not accepted what it held. No one cleaned the graveyard. No one needed to. Cleaned itself. Grass refused to grow too tall there. Animals avoided it instinctively. And on certain nights when time thinned, the air above it shimmered faintly like heat over fire. New Year's Eve was one of those nights. The worst one. 3. Ao returns. Ao arrived in Kijijana the morning before the last sunset of the year. He stepped off the bus with dust on his shoes and a feeling he couldn't name pressing against his chest. Years. That was how long it had been since he left. He remembered the village smaller, quieter. Now it felt restrained, like a place holding its breath. People greeted him with smiles that did not reach their eyes. Hands shook his too tightly. Conversations ended when he approached. Women pulled children closer when they saw him. As if he carried something contagious. As if the dead could smell him. His aunt, Mama Sefu, met him near the well. She looked older than he remembered. Not weaker. Just sharpened by years of knowing things she could never say. She hugged him without warning. Too tightly. "Do not go out tonight," she whispered into his shoulder. "No matter what you hear." Ao laughed softly, trying to shake off the unease. "I hear drums every night in the city," he said. "I'll survive one village celebration." Mama Sefu pulled back. Her face was pale. "This is not a celebration," she said. Before he could ask more, she turned away. For the letter that brought him back. Ao had not planned to return to Kijijana. The city had swallowed him quickly. Concrete, noise, light that never slept. He learned how to forget the smell of wet soil after rain. How to stop listening for things that weren't there. Until the letter arrived. No return address. No stamp. Just a folded piece of rough paper slipped under his door. 3 words written in charcoal. "Come before midnight." The smell lingered. Old smoke. He told himself it was coincidence. Prank. Someone from the village trying to scare him. But his hands shook when he folded it back up. And that night, He dreamed of drums beneath the ground. 5. Sunset on the last day of the year. As the sun lowered behind the red hills, Kijijana changed. Doors were locked earlier than usual. Windows were shuttered. Cooking fires burned low and were quickly smothered. No one sang. No one laughed. Children were pulled inside and told stories in whispers. Stories about animals, about rain, about anything except tonight. Ao sat alone in Mama Sefu's hut, listening. At first, he heard nothing unusual. Then faintly laughter. Distant. Floating on the wind like smoke. He stood. The laughter did not come from the village. Came from beyond it. From the graveyard. 6. When the drums began to answer themselves. Ao stepped outside. The air was thick, not cold, not warm, just heavy, as if breathing required permission. Every house was sealed. No lamps burned. The village had folded inward, hiding from itself. The laughter grew clearer. Then came music. A drumbeat. Low. Steady. Ancient. Not played by hands. The rhythm did not rise or fall. Did not rush. It waited. Boom, boom, boom. Then another sound. Clink. Clink. The sound of plates touching. Ao's stomach tightened. No, he whispered. This isn't possible. But the graveyard glowed. Faint lights flickered between the stones. Not fire. Not lanterns. Something older. He moved closer. With every step the sound sharpened. Voices joined the rhythm. Not shouting. Not singing. Speaking. Spoken gently. Lovingly. As if greeting old friends. 7. The midnight boundary. Ao stopped at the edge of the graveyard. He should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to pretend he had never heard anything at all. But the ground beneath his feet felt warm. Alive. He saw them. Shadows seated around low tables. Food laid out neatly. Hands clapping in time with the drums. Faces hidden, yet smiling. Some figures wore clothes from decades past. Some wore nothing at all. They were not decayed. They were preserved. Held. And then, midnight struck. The earth trembled. One grave, fresh, darker than the others, split open. The soil parted slowly, reverently, as if making space. From inside came a voice. Clear. Blows. Calling a name. O's blood turned to ice. The name was spoken twice. And the second time, it was his. 8. The name that should never be answered. Ao. The voice was not angry, not threatening, sounded pleased, like someone finally spotting a familiar face in a crowd. Ao. His knees weakened. The figures turned toward him, not aggressively, expectantly. He felt something brush against his thoughts, memories that weren't his, warmth that didn't belong to the night. A hand emerged from the grave. Then another. Not pulling. Inviting. Oh, screamed. The sound shattered the moment. The lights flickered. The laughter paused. And suddenly silence. Complete. Violent. Oh, ran. Or tried to. The path twisted beneath his feet. Trees leaned closer. Every road curved back toward the graveyard. Exhausted, he collapsed near the elder's house as dawn bled into the sky. They were waiting. No shock. No surprise. The oldest among them, Babakunda, looked down at him with tired eyes. You were called, the elder said calmly. So now, he continued, you must understand. Ao opened his mouth to protest. But the village had already begun preparing. Not for celebration. For explanation. They sat him in the center of the elder's circle. No one touched him. No one comforted him. Babakunda spoke slowly. choosing each word like a stone placed carefully on a grave. Long ago, he said, this village was dying. Famine. Or sickness. People vanished without reason. Crops failed. Children stopped being born. Until one New Year's Eve. The dead returned, Baba Kunda said. Not to punish. Not to destroy. But to collect. One life, he continued. Every year. In exchange the village lived. The dead celebrated survival. They feasted because the balance had been kept. Ao shook his head violently. This is madness, he whispered. Mama Sephew would not meet his eyes. They do not feast because they are cruel, Baba Kunda said. They feast because they remember. Those taken were not lost. They were held, remembered, given purpose. And once a name was spoken at midnight, could not be taken back. That night Ao heard whispers everywhere. From water, from mirrors, from the soil beneath his feet. You are late, they said. You belong with us. As the sun fully rose, the village exhaled. Life resumed. Cooking fires lit. Children stirred. But one truth hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. The dead had prepared. And they had called him. The dead do not call names to scare you. They call names to invite you. If you think the dead only take, stay with this story. Because in Kijijana, survival always costs someone. Ao woke to the smell of smoke and wet clay. Not the comforting smoke of cooking fires, but the hollow tang of burning roots. Incense perhaps, or something older. He lay on a thin mat in Mama Sephew's hut. She sat across from him, eyes closed, murmuring in a language he half remembered from childhood. The words felt like chains, binding him to the floor, to the air, to the place he had tried to escape for 10 years. His chest ached with the memory of midnight. His name. He shivered. Why me? He whispered. Mama Sephew opened her eyes, sharp as flint. Because you returned. Because the dead know you could not forget. Because the village cannot survive without someone who remembers who is alive, and who must be called next. Ao swallowed hard. He wanted to ask more, to demand answers. But the air pressed down, and words felt meaningless. Outside, the village was stirring, but not as before. Children walked in silence. Elders carried bundles without speaking. Doors were opened only to close again moments later. Something had begun. By midday Ao was led, more like guided, to the central clearing. The elders sat in a circle, stones marking the perimeter like teeth. He recognized Baba Kunda at the head, his expression unreadable, but eyes sharp and knowing. The feast begins, Baba Kunda said. Ao's stomach turned. He had imagined something grotesque, perhaps blood and soil, but what he saw made him falter. The ground was smooth, clean. Clay tables had been arranged in long rows. Plates of food, familiar dishes, the kind his mother had cooked, were set neatly. But there was no one to eat. First, then slowly shadows began to rise. Not from behind the trees. Not from the graveyard. But from the earth itself. The soil of the clearing cracked and quivered, and figures emerged, silent, careful. Some wore robes from decades past. Some wore the simple clothes of children. Some were naked. Their skin was pale, yes, but flawless, untouched by rot. They moved with reverence, stepping around the clay tables, around the candles that lit themselves. They were the dead. And they had been waiting. A figure approached him first. Young, barely older than a child, carrying a clay cup of water. It looked at him with eyes so familiar, so human, that Ao's knees nearly buckled. Do you remember me? It asked. Ao shook his head, but a name slipped out before he could stop it. Lulu. The figure's lips curved in a smile that was neither cruel nor kind, but sad. I remember you, it said. You are late. But you are here. That is enough. Then more came. Figures from all corners of his memory. Neighbors who had vanished, elders who had died before he left, children who had never grown. Each one greeted him by name. Some embraced him. Others simply nodded. And then Baba Kunda spoke again. Each year one life is offered, one name called, one presence welcomed. The balance is kept. The village survives because the dead remember, and the living remember what is owed. Eo wanted to turn away. He wanted to run. But he felt rooted to the clay floor, every breath measured, every heartbeat in sync with the quiet drum that now began beneath the earth. Boom, boom, boom. It was subtle, ancient, patient. Baba Kunda rose, his hands steady, and moved to the center of the circle. The first feast was not chosen by accident, he said. Long ago, the village faced death in every form. Famine, disease, predators. The earth rejected our prayers. The sky turned cold. Until the dead came. They spoke not with anger, but with reason. One life for the many. One name to be called so the rest could continue. And so the pact was made. The dead feast not to consume, but to remember. To honor. To preserve the cycle. O's stomach churned. You mean someone has to die? He asked, voice trembling. The one whose name is spoken, Baba Kunda said. Not by force. By recognition. By acknowledgement. You cannot refuse what the dead call. They are patient. They wait. They do not forget. And if the name is ignored, the elder let the words hang. Then the balance is broken. The village suffers. The fields fail. Children do not live. You understand. Ao nodded, though his head felt like it might split. He did not. He could not. The dead now gathered around him, circling. Some touched the plates, some adjusted the candles. The air hummed with a vibration that penetrated the mind, not the ears. Memories he had buried, memories of Kijijana, of childhood, of love and loss, rose unbidden. One figure knelt before him, older, dressed in the rags of a long-dead elder. It spoke. You were called because you could remember, because you could witness, because you could accept what is. Ao felt a hand brush his shoulder. Warm. Alive. Not alive. It was impossible. You are the witness now, the figure continued. And the witness must choose. Choose. Ao's voice was a whisper. What choice do I have? The choice is to remember and to pass the name, Baba Kunda said. To honor what has been promised. To survive. Or to flee and break the cycle. Ao's stomach lurched. He felt the pull of the soil, the weight of every grave, the expectations of every shadowed face. Boom, boom, boom. Then, as if acknowledging the agreement silently made, the dead began to eat. Not ravenously, not greedily, but with ceremony. Every bite was precise. Every sip intentional. They moved through the food as if tasting life itself, savoring memory, honoring the exchange. Ao watched, unable to look away. Plates of steaming food, roasted meats, grains, fruits, familiar smells and tastes that should have belonged only to the living, were consumed in silence, punctuated by the steady heartbeat of the earth. The air shimmered with the essence of the dead. He could feel the warmth of their joy, the weight of their sorrow. And then he realized it was not hunger they felt. It was remembrance. And now he understood the fear was not in them. The fear was in forgetting. As the feast progressed, the elders began to speak. Not to him, not aloud, but softly to each other. Ao listened. Whispers of guilt. Of survival at a cost. Of children given over, of parents who could not say no, of names spoken and lives taken so the soil would yield, the rains would fall, the village would endure. They spoke of shame and necessity intertwined, of love and horror. Ao felt the village's burdens settle upon his shoulders. He realized now why the people had hidden their smiles, why they whispered, why they did not celebrate. They were not afraid of the dead. They were afraid of themselves. The pact was their secret, their sin, their lifeline. The drumbeat beneath the earth shifted. Ao felt it in his bones. "You must speak the name," Babakunda said. Ao's throat went dry. He had witnessed the feast, understood the pact, seen the dead gathered in reverence. But naming someone, deciding who would be offered, was a weight he could scarcely bear. And then he heard it. From the soil, from the wind, from the water. A whisper, soft but insistent. "You are next." The dead turned toward him expectant. Their eyes glimmered with patience, not cruelty. O's mind spun. He wanted to scream, to run, to undo the calling. But the village had watched him arrive. The dead had waited. And the balance demanded acknowledgement. Boom, boom, boom. The heartbeat of Kijijana, the pulse of survival. He closed his eyes. And he remembered. Figures moved closer, surrounding him. Warmth radiated from them. The paradox of life and death, memory and flesh. "You are the witness," one said. "You remember, therefore you are safe. Until the name is passed, until the next feast." Ao felt a hand, soft, insistent, guide him toward a small mound at the center of the clearing. A place where the soil seemed looser, darker, ready. He could smell the earth, hear the heartbeat, taste the silence. He placed a hand on the soil, on the mound, and for the first time he felt the weight of the pact, the cost of survival, the power of remembrance. Boom, boom, boom. The feast continued. The dead moved in harmony. And Ao, trembling, whispered a name. Not in anger, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. The moment the name left his lips, the ground trembled again. The dead paused, looking toward him. Then resumed eating, slower now, reverent, as if savoring a memory too delicate to rush. Ao collapsed to his knees. His heart raced. His mind reeled. The village exhaled as one. The balance was kept. But the soil beneath him shifted. And in the shadows of the feast, one figure lingered, watching him with a patience that no living being could ever match. The feast was over for now. But survival had a cost. And the dead, they never forgot. If you think witnessing the dead is enough, think again. Because in Kijijana, knowing the secret binds you. And the next feast is always coming. If you think witnessing the dead is enough, think again. Because in Kijijana, knowing the secret binds you. And the next feast is always coming. Ao woke to silence heavier than the night before. The village had returned to its routine. Cooking fires lit, children running, the clatter of clay pots echoing in narrow streets. Yet the air carried a weight he could not shake. The feast, the dead, the name he had spoken. It had changed everything. Mama Sefu sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't speak. Instead, she offered him the slow, piercing gaze of someone who had long carried secrets that would make the living tremble. "They watch," she finally said, voice quiet but certain. "Even when you cannot see them." Ao shivered. He wanted to ask who, what, why, how. But no question could capture the gravity of what he had witnessed. Outside, the village moved around him like a stage, performers playing roles learned over generations. He had returned a visitor. He would leave, or he would not. Ao wondered. The village seemed unchanged, Yet every glance, every shadow whispered memory and menace. The graveyard loomed in the distance, faintly glowing beneath the morning sun. He could not look away. Every step toward it made his skin crawl, every breath heavier. He passed houses where windows stared blankly, and children whose eyes lingered on him too long. Even birds avoided flying near his path, twisting in arcs that seemed deliberate, careful. It was a village of watchers. The living had learned to mirror the vigilance of the dead. And he had been called. By midday, a figure approached him at the well. Draped in shadows that did not belong to the sun. The face was familiar, yet unplaceable. Features like someone from a dream, someone he remembered without knowing why. "You called them," it said. Oh, froze. I named someone." The figure's eyes glimmered. "Yes, and they accepted. But you do not yet understand. Names are not simply spoken. They are debts, and debts demand repayment." Ao's chest tightened. "Repayment." The figure smiled, a slow, deliberate curl of lips that held no warmth. "Yes, someone must always be chosen. Someone must always go." Boom, boom, boom. The earth throbbed beneath him. The dead were patient, but they were never idle. That evening, Ao was summoned to the elder circle again. The air was thick with incense and soil, the smell of wet roots and old fires. Baba Kunda's gaze fell upon him like a knife. "The feast has passed, but the balance has not," he said. "The named has accepted their role, but the cost comes to life gradually. To understand the dead is to understand that nothing is free." Ao swallowed. "And me. You are the witness," Baba Kunda said. "The keeper. The one who speaks and remembers. Until another is ready, the cycle turns through you. And the dead, they will teach you." Ao realized then, the feast was not merely a ceremony. It was an education in terror, patience, and memory. He was being initiated. That night, he returned to the graveyard. Not by choice, not by fear, but by a compulsion he could neither resist nor name. The earth quivered beneath his feet. Figures emerged, not hurriedly, not with malice, but with ritual precision. One approached him. Woman. Young once, now preserved by the soil. "You called me," she said. "Do you understand what that means?" I think so," Ao whispered. "No," she replied. "You do not. You will learn. And when you do, you will know that every smile in the village carries a shadow. Every child's laugh is borrowed. Every meal is owed." Ao watched as she lifted a hand, touching a grave. The soil responded, rising and falling like a slow heartbeat. "You are being taught," she said. "By watching. By remembering. By feeling the cost." The dead gathered around him. They did not speak, but their presence pressed against his mind. Memories of those named, the ones given up in past years, surged through him. Children who had vanished, elders who had not aged, neighbors whose laughter had once filled the air but was now only echo. Each had been accepted willingly, or nearly so, into the cycle. Each had fed the village's survival. Ao saw the weight of it. Names spoken, lives claimed, balances struck. It was beautiful in its horror, terrifying in its necessity. And he realized he was not merely watching. He was learning to participate. Baba Kunda appeared at the edge of the clearing. His voice cut through the rhythm of the earth. "You have seen. You have remembered. The time comes for your role to solidify. You may not refuse." O's mind raced. Could he name someone else? Could he turn the cycle onto another, protect himself, survive? But he knew the answer. The dead did not tolerate trickery. The soil beneath him pulsed with awareness. The wind whispered with patience. Every shadow was patient, every light deliberate. He understood then, survival was not a gift. It was an agreement, one that demanded acknowledgement, even at the cost of the living. The dead arranged themselves in concentric circles, ancient and precise. Ao was guided to the center, hand trembling, eyes wide. The mound of soil awaited, darker than night, soft yet unyielding. He knelt before it, feeling the pulse beneath his fingers. "You will speak," Baba Kunda intoned. "You will pass the name, and the balance will remain. Or you will falter, and the debt will claim more than one." Ao's lips parted. His throat ached. His heartbeat matched the drum beneath the earth. He named. The soil shifted. The figure accepted. The pulse slowed. The dead resumed their feast. Quiet now. Reverent. Patient. Eternal. O rose, unsteady but alive. The dead looked at him differently now. Not as an intruder, not as a witness, but as one of them in a role he could not refuse. "You understand now," Baba Kunda said. "To survive is to remember. To remember is to pass the debt. To pass the debt is to live." O nodded. His body shivered not from fear, but from comprehension. He had entered the rhythm. He had seen the feast, the sacrifice, the cycle. And he realized the truth that no child in Kijijana could ever speak aloud. The dead are patient, but the living carry the burden. And those who witness must bear it forever. The night waned. The feast ended. The dead returned to their graves, fading not into nothing, but into memory. The soil closed above them, smooth and unbroken, as if nothing had disturbed it. Ao walked home, hearing whispers in every step, feeling the weight of every name, past and future, pressing on him. The village was alive. Children laughed. Fires burned. Doors opened. Life resumed. But he knew better. The dead do not sleep. They wait. They remember. And they call names. Patiently, deliberately, endlessly. Ao had survived. He had witnessed. He had remembered. But the feast would come again. And next time the debt would not be his alone. If you think horror is in what you see, it is in what you remember. In Kijijana, survival is never free. And those who know the secret carry it forever. Subscribe for more terrifying tales.